Hello, and welcome to the latest episode of 2Ds in a Pod. This week, we will be continuing to look at the recently completed World Cup in the US. So join us as we discuss how the tournament took shape and what future World Cups might have in store. So, John, good to see you.
Thanks. Good to see you too.
So, it's the end of the World Cup. Lots of excitement,
Yeah, we've survived.
lots of drama. Survived to start. What were your overall impressions?
What has it been? I can't even remember the world before the World Cup. Was it 4 weeks? I don't know, 100 odd games or something ridiculous. I enjoyed the tournament. I've got to say, I enjoyed the tournament. A small bit of my day will be vacant now. I don't know what I'm going to do with the mornings when I think, oh my God, was that the result last night? And check in various websites to see what was going on. So, I enjoyed it. I think there were some pluses and minuses, but overall, I enjoyed the tournament. What about you?
Yeah, I thought it was a good tournament. I mean, I think I've said before that I felt it was a very large tournament. Having that number of teams meant that there were a lot of games early on, particularly that were low block games where big teams playing a little team that has big teams obviously got a lot to lose and little teams just out for a draw or a narrow wing. But there were some very good positives that came out of it. Some of the football was very good. Some of the top players, interestingly, all the top players, particularly goal scorers, came to the fore in the tournament. People like Mbappe and Messi and Kane and Bellingham scored goals. So, and the top four teams ranked in the world got to the semi-finals. So a lot to be said for FIFA's ranking and the performance of the players.
Yeah, I'd agree. I think the size of the World Cup is obviously, as the tournament gets bigger, it's going to be harder and harder to host. I think the next one is in 3 countries, Spain, Morocco and Portugal, but they're also playing one-off games in Uruguay and Argentina for some bizarre reason. So as it gets bigger, it's definitely going to be harder to control. But I think I wouldn't want... FIFA's answer is to go to 64.
Yes.
To avoid this kind of dead games with the way they ran it this time. And I think 64 is too big, personally. This was about as far... I don't think they're going to go back to... There were issues with some games towards the end. I just think 64 is just... I mean, who could... What country alone could hold that? Probably, maybe the UK, maybe Germany. I just don't see there's enough stadiums. I don't see the infrastructure that's required now. I mean, it was a well viewed, but the spectators, the stadium seemed to be pretty full.
Yeah.
Lots of big. Yeah. So the number of stadiums required is a lot.
Yeah, and I wonder, does a tournament lose its identity a bit? Because when you think back of the great tournaments of the past, like you had Italian 90, you had in South Korea, those were very iconic tournaments because they were in one or maybe 2 countries. If you go too wide with your hosting, does it lose a certain amount of that identity? I remember Mexico in 1970, the sunshine and those open stadiums, those kind of things. Do we lose a little bit of that if we're spreading it all around the world? It just becomes a more general tournament.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point, because if you, I don't know, obviously Mexico were due to play all their games in Mexico, so that meant that was a lot of buzz for that. But if Mexico, for whatever reason, didn't get through and you ended up with Qatar and Malawi or something playing in the Azteca, how many people would go and how important would that be? That would be one factor. But I mean, I'm amazed. I think Qatar, I don't know how they did it. They obviously had the money to build stadiums. Probably China could obviously put a World Cup on. They could probably decide that they want to build 15, 20 stadiums. I mean, it's going to lose its identity. You know, the fans, where do they go to? I have no idea how easy it was for Argentinian and Spanish, to negotiate getting to the final if you're a fan, because you're traveling to Miami and then Dallas and then New York. So, yeah.
And as a viewer, how do you keep track of having 48 teams waking up in the morning and seeing what games have been played, who's playing who? If it's 64 teams, can you really keep a grasp of all that's going on in the tournament, whether that's a good thing or a bad thing? And to your point, there'll be a lot of games that people just aren't interested in because the tournament is so large. And if you've got games where people aren't interested, does that take away from the World Cup, which, generally speaking, in this World Cup, as you say, has got a lot of people in. At the end of the day, it comes down to money. And this tournament has matched $13 billion and
incredible sum of money, yeah.
Double what they made in Qatar last time. Does that, if that goes back into the game and we see the benefit of that, then maybe it's the ends justify the means. If next time round we get $20 billion into the game.
But where does it go? I think FIFA will say, and I would too, that, things like Cape Verde, it was great to see them, what they did. and they were one of those kind of old FA Cup style kind of couple of great results, managed to stay in the game and get through. How much better can they do? I don't know. There are only 500,000 people, whatever it was, some ridiculous sum, a number of population. I don't know how much better they can get. You've got. I think you made a point last time that people like Japan and Morocco have made big investments in their infrastructure to develop great teams, but they've got big populations. Iceland, I can't see winning the World Cup. Haiti, can't see winning the World Cup. Cape Verde, I can't see winning the World Cup. So you've got these. Are they just in it for the sake of it? I don't know, and that's a question for FIFA.
I think it was interesting that teams did feel any success for some teams was greeted. They were greeted as heroes when they returned to their country. Norway obviously lost to England, treated as heroes when they went back home. Some of the smaller nations, when they went home, were treated as heroes. Some nations who just qualified were treated as heroes. So I think it does give a feel-good factor to countries. And if you're looking to bring the world up generally, get more people interested in football, provide more money to invest in more, and maybe that's a good thing. But it does take away that uniqueness, that what's made the World Cup great for someone like myself who's been watching 50 odd years.
Yeah, I mean, I think the European teams didn't get it all their own way this tournament, which was good to see. A lot of African teams got to generally a pretty good level, but they were not yet a breakthrough team. And the Asian teams, really, other than Japan, didn't really show anything or too much. FIFA could argue that, well, there's still India, there's still China, and there's still potentially countries in Africa and Asia that could come through. But I can't see where, for example, New Zealand, you've got rugby, you've got cricket, you've got other extreme sports that are, really they're a small population. Qualifying is kind of fantastic for them. Can they go further? Probably not. South America, I don't know how many, there's probably only about, someone's going to correct me on this, but I don't know, 15, 16 countries, 18 countries in South America, and 10 or 11 of them are already in there. And then you've got host nations, if they're there. So you're almost guaranteed a place. And any of the top European 20, I mean, Italy would have probably got through if there'd been 64 teams, as would have, I don't know. Well, Holland have missed a couple. England have missed a couple over the years. But that also, I think, added to the interest.
For sure. I remember 74 and 78 when England failed to qualify. It was like a shock to the system that we failed to qualify. But it does create that uniqueness that when we came around in Spain 82, they qualified, it becomes a bigger thing. So there's no jeopardy. If you go to 64 teams, then pretty much, as you say, Europe will have a dominant number of teams in the tournament. And maybe that's a good thing? Maybe it's good to make sure that everybody's there and teams like Italy don't miss out, because it is a shame when the big teams don't get there, particularly if you've won the World Cup and another team hasn't been there and they've said, well, you won the World Cup. We've been there. Potentially.
Yeah, but if I look at, I mean, for that thing, if I look at, Brazil are the only team, I believe, that have qualified for every World Cup. And they were pretty awful, to be honest. And they are, so on past glories, do they deserve to qualify just by right? Not sure. I was, of all the teams I look forward to seeing, Brazil are one I look forward to seeing play. And when I saw them this year, I thought, you know what, I might as well have been watching, I don't know, any of the other teams, there was nothing special about them. And if all teams are equal and all teams are kind of much of a muchness, it's kind of just so, the margins are so fine in professional sport that it takes it away. I mean, Mexico, stunning because they were in the Azteca, they really worked. Even Argentina, to their point, they were a resilient team. The guys you could tell were proud to play for their country, want to do the best for their country. But when it gets to kind of, well, we're in it anyway and we're always going to be in it, and it's that, I think that does take away something from the special, that special X factor that the World Cup has. It would be good. Yeah, it's good for a big team to miss it now and again.
Yeah, maybe it helps focus the mind. I mean, Brazil didn't look like there was no mystique about Brazil anymore. Everybody knows all the players, a lot of the players play in European leagues, and they weren't the exciting team that we used to look forward to seeing play, because we rarely saw them play other than in World Cups in previous years, but now we see their team regularly. So you can go either way. You can either say, look, make it a big tournament and then everybody will get in, every team will get there. The Brazils, even if they're doing badly, will always play there, or keep it a smaller tournament. But I agree with you, they won't go back. They've made such a huge amount of money this time around, and the power, influence and control it gives FIFA is something that's very difficult to...
I didn't like, obviously, the US being the major host of this tournament, Canada Mexico were sort of secondary to them by the nature of the US and the size of the population, everything else, and the money involved. I didn't like that Americanization of the game where, it became cool to the advertising was prevalent everywhere it could be. I think for a game that's obviously European, South American in kind of historically, there are elements I didn't like, but I understand for the American public that they paid the fees, they paid fee for the big bucks. So I didn't like that. I'd like it to get to a simpler. These bigger events with halftime shows and that, I'm not a big fan of. I think the football loses in that.
Yeah, I think I saw an interesting interview the other day, and they were interviewing an American sports podcaster, and he was saying talking about the Balogun situation. He said,
"Oh yeah,
that's what America's all about." He said there are multiple legal cases going on in America where one sports team is suing another sports team for this, that, and the other. They're a country that's based on, they've got this legalistic framework, which is the basis of their country, and everything falls around that. So we shouldn't be surprised to see that. So it's a shame that, and it comes down to Infantino at the end of the day, as the guardian of the beautiful game, that he's allowed, bring in the good things from other cultures and other countries, but don't let the corrupting things and the negative things that is typical of America.
I think obviously their sport is designed around, I don't know how many teams are in the NFL or NBA or whatever, or NHL, but there are a set number of teams. They have a franchise for a city and that's it. And there's no promotion or relegation. Now, we are used to, in the non-soccer world, the football world, of promotion and relegation being a regular occurrence. And I think that's the other worry about when you get to that bigger tournament. At the end of the day, you're going, well, these guys are guaranteed to get in, they're guaranteed to do that. And I like that little bit of jeopardy. That, wow, there could be a giant killing effect.
Yeah.
The another couple of things which I didn't even realise till it became obvious that England were out, and they talked about no country having won the World Cup without a manager from that country.
Right. Okay.
And I'd never heard that. And they said the only was, I think it was I can't remember where he was from. I think it was German, the manager of Greece when they won the Euros, is the only tournament in history that a non-native has led the team. And when they talk, people talk about DNA of teams and how they feel, that's got to be in there. I mean, I think that's got to be in there because when you're working with the players, you've got an idea how they would have played, how they would have started the game, whether it be on the streets or, in the park or whatever it was. And maybe that's where that final clash of Tuchel and also Ancelotti at Brazil, that final piece was missing of the jigsaw.
Yeah, no, I think you could be right. I mean, I think I've said before on an earlier podcast that Tuchel took a gamble by leaving out some very good technical players that I don't think anybody else would have left out. And he went for this kind of mechanism. He wanted a high press and the break kind of team that lacked those technical players, the Palmers and the Fodens and maybe the Wattens, you might argue. And that was an experiment almost with, can I create a great group of players who've got a good atmosphere rather than select the best players, because I'm worried that it might damage the atmosphere. Quite a gamble to take. And would an English manager have done that? I'm not so sure. I think was prepared to be more avant-garde, and then that maybe doesn't get the full buy-in of the team, and that might have had a knock-on effect.
I mean, I think England, certainly going back to Fabio Capello and Sven-Goran Eriksson, had decided they want a star manager. And Gareth Southgate somehow ended up with a job in between all of that. But they've wanted not stars, but proven elite managers. Whereas, Spain and Argentina went through a kind of system of doing that. Managers who'd been with the players for a long time and obviously had a steep history in those guys, from a very early age. And I think I saw something that, there's no way the Argentinian or Spanish manager would have got the job from the FA. They would have said, no way. Who are you guys? And that's interesting. And I don't know what, I think that as the game gets bigger and more players are equalised, the managers are equalised, it does take a little bit out of it, I think, this feeling of the French team being French and the Moroccan team being Moroccan and the English team being English and whatever. And it seems to be a bit of it could go either way at the moment. It could be the team with the most money has the best players and that isn't great.
There was some talk with minister some years ago who said, well, why can't we play the players who are playing in our domestic league? Can you imagine the Premier League? And you'd never want it to get to that level. Although, if you see in the World Cup, something like 94 players were born in France, who played in the World Cup.
Right.
49 players were born in the UK, played in the World Cup. So teams are picking and choosing, whether you like it or not. They're strengthening their squads and their teams by harvesting the best who aren't being picked up by their first choice nation.
Yeah, I think the one thing, I had some physio today, and I was talking to the lady. She's got a couple of young boys, one who's 10, I think, and she was saying that, he loved the World Cup because of the goal scorers. And that was the real standout. Normally there might be one or two, but this year everybody scored goals. And I don't know if there's a higher average, and I'll have to check that out, if the games there's been more goals per game rather than, obviously the total number of games has been more. But, as you said before, it's been great. I do feel a little bit that the third place game, the bronze final, with Mbappe scoring 2, I think, and becoming the Golden Boot was a little bit kind of like, that's a little bit off for me, because the competition's ended. You're qualified, and then the final is where it is. That other game is nothing wrong with it. It was a good game. It's one of the most enjoyable games. It was a crazy game and lots of goals. But I don't know if those performances should count towards the.
Yeah, a few people have said that England were definitely not fully concentrated on defence during that game. And I think 6-4. If that had been the final, it would never have been close to.
No. Yeah, I think the last thing I'd ask you is that. So if I was now, I'm the chief scout of, I don't know, Real Madrid, and I've seen that tournament, and I'm thinking, right, who can I go and buy? Who would you go and buy? You're Real Madrid's technical director, and you're like, right, okay, who are the players that? You've already got some of them anyway, but who are you going to go out and buy?
I was one player I thought who's got a lot of potential, and I think he could play a number of positions, is O'Reilly, the left back, because he's naturally a central midfield player. He's 6'4". He's quick. He's very good on the ball. He's at Man City, where he's obviously developed well. He's got an England team at 19, 20 years of age. If I was Real Madrid and I was looking for a player who could be a multi-purpose player who might eventually evolve into a central midfield player, I think I might look at O'Reilly from an English perspective. Other than that, Elise, I think he didn't get the Golden Boot, but he got the most assists in the tournament. He looked very, very good, very accomplished, come a long way since his days at Selhurst Park. What about yourself?
I didn't actually think there was anybody. There were no surprises for me in terms of, wow, this guy's brilliant. I think the French, when they were going forward, was stunning. I loved the team ethic of the Spanish. I thought they were superb. They covered each other. Even though Lamine Yamal didn't really have a fantastic World Cup, but he's obviously, and he's 19, did really like the guy who got the young player of the tournament, the Spanish centre back,
Cabassi.
I thought he was superb because there's not many centre backs who are 19 who would play well in a World Cup final, and he did really well. And they've got Gavi, another kind of 19-year-old or whatever he is, who came on fantastic. 2 or 3. So they're the players. They're at Barcelona. No surprises. There were a couple of fullbacks. I think particularly for Congo, there was a left fullback that I really liked, and the number 23, whose name escapes me, for Germany, who reminded me of Khedira and those kind of players. There weren't many surprises, which is also disappointing. I think there wasn't any star that I thought, wow, this guy's come from nowhere, and boom, it was all the regulars, if you like, all the well-known players who were there and thereabouts. That was a disappointment for me. I don't know, lots of players excited me, but I'm not sure I'd go out and say no. One thing I'll definitely say is that I'm amazed at this transfer business that's been going on during the World Cup.
Yes.
And I'm not sure, first of all, Elliot Anderson, is he a £100 million player? Not sure. Is Morgan Ross a £100 million player? I'm not sure what I would say.
A lot of money, isn't it?
A lot of money. So I don't know if there were any other £100 million players there that I thought, wow, I'd pay that money for them. I don't know if those guys delivered enough to warrant that, but hey, not my budget.
Okay.
Good
to speak to you.
Yeah. 4 years' time. Can we wait that long?
And let's look forward to 4 years' time.
Okay. Good to talk to you, Peter.
Right.
See ya.
Bye. Well, that's it for this week. Join us next time for another episode of 2Ds in a Pod.